I spent half my life giving everything to people who thought I was too quiet to matter. I gave my time, my hands, my back, my whole heart, and in return, I got laughed at. In my own house, at my own dinner table, by my own son's wife. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been treated like a background character in your own life? Like you're just there to cook, clean, smile, and disappear when the real guests arrive? If you've ever swallowed your pride just to keep the peace, hit the like button. And if someone ever made you feel small in your own home, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Because this one's for the people who've been quiet for too long. My name is Josie May, and what happened that night didn't just hurt me. It woke me up. It was supposed to be a simple family dinner. Lee, my son Franklin's wife, had invited her parents, her sister, and a few friends over for some kind of intimate wellness gathering. Which basically meant I did all the work, shopping, cooking, setting the table, while she poured wine and snapped filtered photos of rosemary sprigs. But I didn't complain. That's what they expected. I'd always been the one to make sure things were taken care of. Always the one behind the scenes. And I told myself I was okay with that, until I heard her say it. We were all sitting around the table. I was at the end, next to the sideboard, so I could hop up and refill the salad or grab more napkins. The roast chicken was perfect. Golden brown, crispy skin. The wine glasses shimmered under the pendant lights. Everyone was laughing, buzzing with that fake warmth people wear at dinner parties. Lee's mother turned to her and asked, "Oh, who's this?" She motioned toward me with that tight-lipped smile that's supposed to look polite but never reaches the eyes. Leah didn't even flinch. She giggled and said, "Oh, that's Josie. She's just the maid around here, keeps the house running." They laughed. Her sister laughed. Her friends, even her parents, even my son. Franklin chuckled, like it was a cute joke. Like it wasn't me they were talking about. Like I wasn't sitting right there with the apron still tied around my waist. And I just sat there, holding the salad tongs, feeling the floor give way beneath me. I didn't say a word. I didn't make a scene. I just smiled like it didn't shatter something inside me. I excused myself quietly, took the wine bottle I'd brought up from the basement, and walked back to the kitchen. They kept laughing. No one, not one single person, corrected her. No one said, "That's my mother." Not even Franklin. I stood there alone in the kitchen, listening to the clinking of glasses and the low hum of jazz playing through the speakers. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't a guest in that house. I wasn't a mother. I wasn't even family. To them, I was just background. So I did what I always did. I made coffee, I cleaned the dishes, I tucked the leftovers into containers. But this time I did it with one thought running through my mind. They don't see me now, but they'll remember me when I'm gone. Because this time I wasn't gonna yell. I wasn't gonna cry. I was going to leave. And they weren't gonna see it coming. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. Not even because I was hurt. Though I was, deeply. I didn't sleep because for the first time in years, I could see things clearly. I sat at the edge of the bed I'd bought with my tax refund 15 years ago. The same bed I'd offered to give up when Franklin moved back in after college. The same mattress Leah had once called too lumpy for her taste. Funny, she never offered to buy a new one. She just slept in the room I made feel like home. That night, I traced the edges of the comforter with my fingertips. I stared at the curtains I sewed myself, and the paint I'd picked out after my divorce. This wasn't just a room. It was years. Years of scraping by, years of folding towels just right, years of giving until there was nothing left to give. And somewhere along the way, they stopped seeing me. Franklin stopped calling me Mom. Lee stopped thanking me for dinner. They both stopped noticing that I was the one keeping that house from falling apart. And I let them. God help me. I let them, until that moment at the table, that laugh, that word, Maid. I got up early the next morning, long before the sun had even blinked. The house was still, quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like it's daring you to break it. I made coffee like I always did. 2 mugs, one with almond milk for Franklin, black for me. Even after everything I made his coffee, I fed the cat, even though Leah hated the smell of wet food. She always wrinkled her nose and called it disgusting, but never once lifted a finger to feed him herself. I walked to the linen closet and pulled out 2 large manila envelopes. Inside were the original mortgage documents. My name, my credit score, my down payment. Not Franklin's. Not Lee's. That house didn't belong to them. They just lived in it. They just used it. I opened the drawer in the hallway table and took out the full set of keys. Front door, back door, mailbox, garage. I laid them on the counter. 4 keys. 4 reasons why they should have treated me like more than help. Around 8 a.m., I heard the stairs creak. Leah came down in her overpriced yoga outfit, sipping from her Manifest Your Morning tumbler like she'd invented the sun. She didn't even look at me at first. Just scrolled on her phone, tapping out something to her followers, probably about gut health or coconut oil or whatever nonsense she sold this week. Then she glanced up and blinked. "What's this?" she asked, pointing at the keys. Her voice was flat, no curiosity, just annoyance, like I'd forgotten to refill the oat milk again. I smiled, and when I spoke, it was the calmest I'd felt in years. "Good luck paying the mortgage now." She froze. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a comeback. Her perfectly drawn eyebrows pinched. "I'm sorry, what?" I didn't answer. I walked past her, down the hallway, lined with the photos I had framed, beside the furniture I had bought, past the living room where I had once danced with Franklin when he got into his first-choice university. She didn't follow me. She just stood there, silent. At the front door, I reached for my coat. The same one I wore the day I brought Franklin home from the hospital. I grabbed my purse. Nothing else. I didn't take the dishes, didn't grab the jewelry box from the dresser. Didn't even pocket the cash I knew Leah kept in the kitchen drawer, because I didn't need any of it. They could keep the house, but they weren't keeping me. I opened the door. The morning was cold, but clean. As I stepped outside, I heard Franklin's voice behind me. "Mom?" I didn't turn around. I kept walking down the steps. "Mom? Where are you going? Wait!" I heard the door swing open. His bare feet slapped against the driveway behind me. He sounded panicked. Like he was realizing something too late. Like the ground beneath him had suddenly cracked wide open. But I didn't stop. I didn't run either. I walked, calmly, steadily, like a woman who had just put down a weight no one else could see. He called my name again. "Mom, come on. Don't do this." I reached my car, opened the door gently, slid inside. He caught up just as I was closing it. I looked at him, really looked. And for a second, he looked like the little boy who used to bring me drawings of robots and dinosaurs. But then, I remembered. He had laughed. He had let them mock me. And he hadn't said a word to stop it. So I closed the car door. Not with rage, not with drama, just quietly. Because something inside me had snapped. But not in the way you'd think. It wasn't fire, it wasn't even pain, it was clarity. And clarity doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It just knows. I started the engine, pulled out of the driveway without looking back, and in the rearview mirror I saw my son standing barefoot on the pavement, mouth open, eyes wide. He had no idea how much he'd just lost, and neither did I. Yet, the first night away didn't feel like freedom. It felt like silence. Heavy, aching silence that settled over everything like dust. I had moved into the tiny upstairs unit above a bakery in the older part of town. The landlord, Chris Dugan, was an old friend from church. She didn't ask questions, just handed me the key and said, "Take what time you need." The apartment smelled like old wood and something sweet, maybe cinnamon. It creaked when I walked, groaned when I turned on the heat, and wheezed every time the fridge kicked in. But it was mine. Just mine. I unpacked my things slowly. A bag of clothes, a few photos, my notebook. That was all I had brought with me. That was all I needed. There was no TV, no Wi-Fi, no Franklin. And for a while, that was the hardest part. Not the betrayal, not the insult, but the silence that followed. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't even send one of those dry, guilt-soaked messages he used to send after arguments. He just vanished, like I never existed. I sat on the old plaid couch in the corner and stared out the window for hours. I didn't cry. I just sat, still, like a ghost haunting someone else's life. I kept replaying that night at the dinner table, the way they laughed, the way they looked through me. The way Franklin didn't even flinch when his wife called me just the maid. I thought I'd be furious. But mostly I felt hollow. So I did what I'd always done. I kept moving. I cleaned the little apartment. I walked to the corner market and bought peanut butter and crackers. I lit a candle. wrote a grocery list, folded the same blanket 4 times. That's what survival looks like when you've been discarded by the people you gave your whole life to. It's not loud, it's not brave, it's just one breath at a time. 3 days in, I opened the old armoire in the corner, hoping to find an extra blanket. Instead, I found something I hadn't seen in years. A dented metal tin, heavy, rusted around the edges. It had been tucked behind some holiday decorations and a broken lamp. I recognized it right away. It had belonged to my sister, Susanna Peck. She had lived in the same building years ago, before her cancer took her too fast, too young. I sat down on the floor and placed the tin in front of me. There was a part of me that wanted to leave it closed, to keep the memories locked away. But something in me needed to open it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, most addressed to Susanna from friends, cousins, co-workers. But one envelope was different. It had my name on it, written in her careful, looping handwriting. "Josie, read this when you're ready." The date on it was from 10 years ago. I held it in my lap for a long time before I opened it. My hands were shaking. The letter wasn't long. Susanna wrote that there was something she had never told me, something that had haunted her. She'd worked part-time at the hospital where I gave birth to Franklin. Back then, she was doing clerical work, handling files, making copies, answering phones. She said that on the night Franklin was born, something strange happened. A last-minute room change. A mix-up with the bassinets. She remembered hearing a nurse whisper, "We'll sort it out later," just before my son was wheeled into my room. She thought it was nothing, at the time, but over the years, it gnawed at her. Then, 3 years before she passed, she found something in an old file box in her garage, a document from the hospital, a settlement form. It mentioned a payout to a couple named Tom and Marla Doherty. The reason? An unspecified administrative error regarding their child's birth record. That was the moment, she said, that she knew. "Franklin might not be your son." I dropped the letter. It felt like the ground had tilted. My ears were ringing, my hands went cold, my vision blurred like I was underwater. I pulled the rest of the papers out of the tin. There were photocopies, hospital logs, a newspaper clipping with a birth announcement. There was even a picture. A baby boy wrapped in a pale yellow blanket with a hospital tag that read, "Thomas Dougherty, Jr., my real son. Born the same day, in the same hospital, at the same hour." The photo had a crease down the middle, like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. He looked just like Franklin used to, but softer, kinder. I sat there on the floor until the candle burned out. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't cry. And then the strangest thing happened. I didn't feel grief. I didn't feel rage. I free. Not because I didn't love Franklin, but because suddenly, the years of coldness made sense. The distance. The way he looked at me like I was an obligation. The way he let Leah speak to me like I was the help. Maybe he always felt like a stranger. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe I had felt it too and just didn't want to believe it. I placed the photo back in the envelope and tucked it into my notebook. Then I walked to the bathroom mirror. I looked at myself for a long time. The lines around my eyes, the tired curve of my shoulders. The woman who had raised a child who didn't defend her. But I didn't hate her, not anymore. She was broken, yes. But she was waking up. And the world had no idea what that meant yet. After that night with the letter, everything changed. Not on the outside. The world still turned. The bakery downstairs still opened at 6 a.m. sharp. Birds still chirped on the windowsill like nothing had shifted. But inside me, something had snapped back into place. Not the old version of me, the caretaker, the peacemaker. No, this was someone new, someone who had nothing left to prove, but everything to discover. I didn't tell anyone about the letter. Not Chris, not anyone from church, not even Franklin, though he hadn't reached out anyway. Instead, I opened my spiral notebook and turned to a fresh page. I wrote down the name, Tom Dougherty Jr., then underlined it. And just like that, I started building a new kind of truth. It didn't take much digging to find him. A quick online search led me to a place called Second Spark Electronics, a repair and resale shop tucked near the industrial side of town. The reviews were glowing. People said Tom was honest, patient, the kind of guy who didn't talk down to you even when you handed him a laptop with soda spilled across the keyboard. I told myself I was just curious, that I was going to look, just once. But that's not what happened. The first time I went, I parked across the street and stayed in the car. The storefront was plain, olive green trim, an open sign that flickered slightly at the edges. Inside, I could see shelves of cords, phone cases, and old radios. And behind the counter, him. Tom. He wore a navy work shirt with his name embroidered in white. His hair was neatly cut, his movements calm and careful, like someone who listened more than he spoke. And I stared. Because somehow, even from that distance, he felt familiar. Not in the face, not in the voice, but in the energy, the stillness. Like someone who had learned to take care of everything on his own. That night, I walked home with a different kind of ache. Not sadness, regret. Regret for every birthday I missed, every scraped knee I never kissed, every homework assignment I never helped with. And yet there was something healing in knowing he existed, that he had grown up kind, whole, good. Over the next few days I kept going back, not inside, just outside. Watching, making mental notes. He opened the shop at 9 a.m. sharp, took a break around 1:30 to grab lunch, usually a sandwich from the food truck next door. He had a soft spot for kids, always kneeling to talk eye level when someone brought in a busted tablet. And the more I saw, the more I wrote. Not just about him, about me, about who I had been forced to become. I started a second journal. Not the emotional one. This one was for facts, records, strategy. Because while I watched Tom build honest connections with strangers, I also started watching Franklin and Leah from a very different angle. It started when I found Leah's Instagram. Of course, she hadn't blocked me. She didn't even notice I was gone. Her feed was flooded with filtered brunch pics, manifestation tips, and wellness buzzwords. She had a brand now, Lee Rising, a website, a digital course, even merchandise. At first I almost laughed, but then I started reading the comments. People believed her. She called herself a self-made coach, said she built her empire from nothing. She didn't mention the house she lived in was paid for by someone else. She didn't mention that someone else had walked away with just a coat and a purse. And Franklin? He had no job listed, no updates. He was tagged in Leah's photos but never posted anything himself. That's when I got suspicious. So I started digging deeper. I pulled up the mortgage information online. My name, still listed as the primary owner. I looked into the business registration for Leah Rising, filed under an LLC with a P.O. box. No active tax filings for the past 2 quarters. The deeper I looked, the shakier their world became. Everything was propped up by borrowed money, flashy filters, and fake confidence. They weren't thriving. They were pretending. And I knew exactly how to dismantle it. But I wasn't ready yet. First, I needed to know Tom, just a little more. So I finally went inside. It was a Thursday morning. Rainy. The kind of day that makes you want to crawl back into bed. But I walked into Second Spark with purpose. Tom was at the counter, unpacking a box of charging cables. He looked up, smiled. "Hey there. What can I help you with?" His voice was warm, even, steady. I froze for a moment, heart pounding in my chest. "Just browsing," I said, pretending to glance around. "Sure," he said. "Let me know if you need anything." I picked up a small portable charger and carried it to the counter. He rang it up. "Good choice. These don't overheat like some of the others." I nodded. "Thanks." As he placed it in the bag, our fingers brushed. Just for a second, but it felt like recognition. Not his, of course. Mine. "You run this place?" I asked softly. "Sort of. My parents helped me get started. They're retired now. I do most of the day-to-day." I smiled. Of course they helped. Of course he had support. Not like Franklin, who had me, and still managed to become cold. Tom handed me the bag. "Have a good day," he said. I nodded again, afraid my voice would crack. "You too." I walked out into the rain, blinking against the drizzle. But I wasn't sad. I felt something else. Hope. That night, I added one last line to my journal. Franklin had my love and turned it into leverage. Tom had none of me, and still grew into someone worth knowing. And for the first time in a long, long time, I let myself smile. By the time the leaves started changing, so had I. I wasn't mourning anymore. I was studying, listening, waiting. And every morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I had chores to do. Not because someone needed breakfast. But because I had a purpose. Franklin and Lee still hadn't reached out. Not even a guilt-ridden text from Franklin, and definitely not a fake apology from Leah. But I wasn't waiting for them to wake up anymore. I was already halfway through the door they'd never thought I'd walk through. At night, I'd sit in my little kitchen with a cup of ginger tea and my second notebook open, the strategy book, as I started calling it in my head. It wasn't a diary, it wasn't emotional, it was cold, clean, and methodical. Page 1, House Ownership, Josie May, verified. Page 2, Lee Rising LLC, no public income filings since Q1. Page 3, Franklin, no employment listed, last known employer, Caldridge Real Estate, resigned 6 months ago. They weren't just ungrateful. They were sinking. And they had no idea the foundation under their feet had my name written all over it. But I still wasn't in a rush. Because power, when it's real, doesn't rush. It waits until the time is right. One afternoon, while organizing the drawer in the tiny hallway closet, I found an old business card for a woman named Jen Melton, an attorney I had met years ago when a friend went through a nasty estate battle. She was sharp, fair, not flashy but efficient. I called her. She remembered me, barely, but she listened when I explained what had happened. I told her about the house, the mortgage, the title, the inheritance I used to buy it. I left out the betrayal, the insults, the word maid. She didn't need to hear all that. Because the facts alone were enough. She pulled up the deed while we were still on the call. "Still in your name," she said after a pause. "They've never refinanced or transferred ownership. You have full legal rights." I asked her what I could do. She paused, then said, "Josie, if you want to list that house tomorrow, no one can stop you." I smiled into the phone. I'd like to start the paperwork. That was step 1. Step 2 was a little more satisfying. I hired a business consultant, a quiet, polite man named Jay Arnold, who specialized in digital footprint analysis. Not quite a private investigator, but close enough. I gave him one task. "I want to know if Leah Richards is everything she says she is." He smiled. "Most of them aren't." Within a week, he delivered a manila envelope with every detail I could have hoped for, and a few I couldn't have imagined. Lee Rising wasn't just shaky, it was a complete illusion. No client invoices. Fake testimonials. Affiliate links masked as partnerships. A rented office space that hadn't been paid for in 2 months. Her social media following? Mostly bots. Her website, built by a freelancer in Romania for $200, and last updated 6 months ago. Jay tapped the envelope and said if this went public, she'd lose everything. I nodded slowly. But I didn't post anything, didn't send it to the blogs or news sites. I printed the pages, added them to another envelope. Wrote one sentence on a sticky note: "Everything you think you know is a performance." Then I mailed it to Anita Yates, Lee's largest known investor and one of her biggest public supporters. 2 days later, the unraveling began. Lee's Instagram went unusually quiet. No stories, no new posts, no Lee Rising inspiration reels. Her latest post, a moody quote about boundaries and transformation, was suddenly filled with strange comments. Scammer energy. "Heard you faked your last brand deal. We need receipts, not quotes. Tag the maid who made that dinner though." And just like that, the glitter started to peel. Her website went down for maintenance. Her upcoming live coaching seminar? Canceled. Her podcast removed from Spotify. And I didn't say a word. I just sat in my little kitchen, sipped my tea, and watched the empire collapse, brick by borrowed brick. Franklin still hadn't reached out, but I started hearing things. From a friend of a friend. From my lawyer. From Chris, who still knew people in town. The house was under financial review. The credit cards were close to maxed. Franklin had applied for a job at 3 different agencies. No bites. And Leah? She had apparently started looking into renting a 1-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Smaller, no balcony, no curated marble countertops. The life they built with my sacrifice was crumbling, because they had no idea how to maintain what they took for granted. And still, I didn't feel joy. I didn't gloat. I felt something much better. Balance. They didn't know it was me. Not yet. But they would, because soon they'd get a letter, signed by me, informing them that the house they posed in, cooked in, and posted selfies in, was going up for sale, and they'd have 30 days to vacate. No extensions, no renegotiations, no emotional appeals, because the woman they called the maid, she was the landlord all along. And she wasn't interested in staying invisible anymore. The letter went out on a Tuesday. A simple white envelope, typed, clean, no fluff. Just a notice of property sale, signed by me and my attorney, and a date, 30 days to vacate. No pleading. No bitterness. Just facts. I didn't wait for the reaction. I didn't pace around expecting fireworks. I went to the cafe down the street from the courthouse, ordered a tea with honey, and sat by the window like it was just another day. But something inside me had shifted. I stirred my drink slowly, watching the sugar dissolve. And I thought, this is what it feels like to reclaim your name without raising your voice. At 10:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. Franklin. First call in months. Not even a text before that. I let it ring, watched the screen light up, watched it dim again. 5 minutes later, a voicemail came through. Mom, what are you doing? Please call me. Lee's freaking out. You can't please, just call me. I set the phone face down on the table, because yes, I could, and I just did. By that evening, I'd received a second message, this time from Leah. She didn't call. She left a voice note. Her voice was tight, the words wrapped in that fake sweetness she used when she was trying not to scream. Hi Josie, it's Leah. Look, we really need to talk. I'm not sure what's going on, but Ethan, sorry Franklin, is extremely upset and confused. We're all confused. If this is about the dinner or something else, maybe we can clear it up. You're going through something, and we just want to support you, okay? But this is hurting all of us. I listened to it twice, not to understand her, but to hear the cracks. Because the thing about people like Leah is, they never expect the quiet ones to hold power. They assume the woman in the apron is just grateful to be there. They forget that the house has a name on it, and it's not theirs. 2 days later, I saw them. By accident, or maybe fate. I had gone to the store to grab some lavender dish soap, and on my way out, I saw them across the parking lot. Franklin looked tired. The shadows under his eyes told stories I didn't need to hear. Lee was walking ahead of him, phone glued to her ear, expression pulled tight as a wire. She didn't see me, but Franklin did. He paused. For a second, I thought he might come over. Instead, he just stood there, half turned, half stuck, watching me like I was someone he used to know. I held his gaze. Didn't smile, didn't flinch, just looked. Then I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away. That night, they came to the apartment. Franklin knocked. I saw him through the peephole before he even touched the door. Hair uncombed, clothes wrinkled, desperation hanging off him like wet laundry. He knocked once, then again. Then, Mom, please, just let me talk to you. I stood on the other side of the door, hand on the knob. I didn't open it. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Because sometimes, silence says what words never could. After a minute, I heard footsteps retreat. Then my phone buzzed. A new voicemail. I know you think we don't care. Maybe we didn't show it right, but this is too much. You're tearing everything down. For what? What did we ever do to deserve this? I sat on the couch, pulled the blanket around my shoulders, and played that message 3 more times. What did they erase me? Over and over. Until I became the woman who served wine and disappeared. And now, they were being forced to see me. The final blow came a week later. Leah tried to fight the sale. Filed a claim through her lawyer, arguing she had invested emotional and lifestyle equity into the home. My lawyer Jen smiled across her desk and said, "That's not a legal term. Let her prove it in court." She couldn't, because she had nothing. Nothing but a brand built on illusions. And illusions don't hold up under real lights. Once word got out that the house was being sold, people started whispering. Lee's followers dwindled. Her last coaching webinar had 12 attendees. 3 demanded refunds. 1 posted a Reddit thread that went viral. Got duped by a wellness coach who kicked her mother-in-law out of her own house. Turns out the maid owned the whole place. Even her sponsors began to distance themselves. Her parents, once so smug, once laughing in my living room with their overpriced wine, stopped showing up in photos. Someone told me they pulled their financial support entirely. That part didn't make me smile. It made me sigh. Because karma isn't about revenge, it's about return. Franklin tried again. Another voicemail. This one, quieter. Mom, I don't even know where to start. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I guess I didn't think you'd actually leave. I didn't think you'd give up on me. Give up? I had spent my whole life holding him up. Even when he started treating me like I didn't matter. Even when he let his wife laugh at me across my own table. Even when he stood by and said nothing. I hadn't given up. I'd simply stopped pretending. That weekend, I visited Second Spark again, Tom's store, my real son, though he didn't know it yet. He was inside, restocking a shelf with old radios, sleeves rolled up, humming under his breath. When he looked up and saw me, he smiled. That same warm, quiet smile. "Back again?" he said, unlocking the door to let me in. "You should just work here at this point." I laughed softly. "Maybe I should." We sat in the back for a while. He made tea, chamomile with honey, no fanfare, no filtered quotes, just two people sitting in the quiet. "Can I ask you something?" he said. I nodded. "Why do you come here?" I hesitated, then looked at him. Really looked. "Because you're kind. Because you feel like home. Because I see pieces of myself in you and it's breaking me slowly." Instead, I said, "I like how it feels in here, like nothing's pretending to be something it's not." He tilted his head, thinking, "Me too." We didn't talk after that, but in that silence, something settled between us. Not answers, not revelations, but a thread, thin, real, unspoken. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's life. I felt seen. It took me 3 more weeks to decide how I was going to tell him. Every version of the speech fell flat. "I'm your real mother." No, too blunt. "There was a hospital mistake." Too clinical. "Your life was built on a switch." Too cruel. I practiced in the mirror, in my car, even while folding laundry. And still, nothing felt right. How do you hand someone the truth and not break everything they've ever believed? But eventually, I stopped trying to make it pretty. Truth isn't supposed to be soft. It's supposed to be honest. So one Thursday morning, I walked into Second Spark with the envelope in my bag. Ruth's letter, the birth records, the DNA confirmation Susanna had quietly paid for years ago. Tom was behind the counter, sipping coffee and reading the local paper. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey there, you want the usual seat by the window?" I smiled back, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Actually, I came to talk." He looked up, reading something in my voice. "Sure, come on back." He led me through a side door to the small break room in the back. Cracked tile floor, coffee-stained countertop, a second-hand couch with mismatched pillows. It was real, it was unfiltered, and it was perfect. We sat down, he waited. I took out the envelope, placed it on the table between us. "What's this?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "Something that's going to change everything." His brows drew in, cautious now. 30-some years ago," I said slowly, "there was a mistake. A hospital mistake. 2 babies, same day. Same hospital. Mine and yours." He didn't speak. Didn't move. I pushed the envelope toward him. "I raised a boy named Franklin Wong, but he wasn't mine, not by blood." He opened the envelope, pulled out the documents, the timeline, the hospital's quiet settlement with the Doughertys, the DNA reports, and the photo, the baby boy in the yellow blanket. His hands trembled. When he looked up at me, his voice was barely above a whisper. "You're saying I'm my son?" I said. "Yes." He stared at the table for a long time, not moving, not speaking, and then slowly, "I don't feel anything." "That's okay," I said. "You don't have to. I'm not here to rewrite your life. I couldn't keep the truth from you any longer." He stood, pacing. Then he stopped, looked at me. "Why now?" "Because I was tired of being erased, and I finally remembered who I was." He didn't cry, didn't rage. He just nodded slowly. "I don't know what to do with this," he admitted. "You don't have to do anything," I replied. "I'm not here for a title. I'm here for honesty." We sat there, 2 people. One past, no script. Then gently he asked, "Can we take it slow?" I smiled through the tears that finally came. I wouldn't ask for anything else. That day we shared tea, talked about books, and a little piece of something new began to take shape between us. Not obligation, not DNA, but choice. And that's where power really lives. A few days later, the house sold, full asking price. Lee and Franklin were officially given 30 days to leave. No extensions, no loopholes, no last-minute saviors. I drove past once. Not to watch, just to witness. They were outside, boxes stacked on the lawn. Lee's designer vase shattered in the driveway. Franklin shouting at a mover over a scratched headboard. It wasn't a scene of tragedy, it was a scene of reality. And I didn't stop, because the chapter was already closed. I gave a portion of the sale money to a local women's shelter. Another part to a fund in Susanna's name, for women starting over after betrayal. I didn't need applause. I didn't even tell Tom. But I told myself. And that was enough. 1 week later, I walked into Second Spark again. Tom was there. He had hung a new wooden sign above the archway, leading to a newly built room at the back of the store. "The next chapter." He handed me a small brass key. "What's this?" I asked. He smiled, a little crooked now. It's yours. For however long you want it. I walked to the door, slid the key into the lock. Inside was a cozy space. Armchair, rug, bookshelves, a kettle on a tiny table. It smelled like cedar and hope. I turned back, my throat tight. Why are you giving this to me? Tom shrugged. Because someone once told me, the people we overlook are often the ones holding everything together. That night, I went home, opened my notebook one last time, and wrote, I used to be the woman who folded napkins, swallowed insults, and made space for people who never made space for me. Now, I write the story. And the door I walk through is one only I have the key to. If you've ever been laughed at in your own home, erased from your own story, or called just the maid in a life you built with your bare hands, let this be your reminder. You don't have to yell to reclaim your name. You just have to stop opening the door. Have you ever had to walk away so you could finally be seen? Tell your story in the comments. Let someone else know they're not alone. Hit like if this one hit close to home. And subscribe because we've got more stories coming for the quiet ones who are done being quiet.